All right, are you ready for our closer? Yeah. All right, well, when I met Brian, he really thrilled us with his stories of working in big tech and all of the work he had done across the country working in startup ecosystems. I actually think I said something like, can we bottle this and give it to everybody we know? So get ready, because here's your drink. So please join me in welcoming Brian-Gorbett, who will be presenting Building Communities One Person at a Time.
Okay, there's still some of us here. All right. Thank you. Thank you first, Flashstarts, for having me. It's been an amazing journey getting back to my hometown. While I live in Silicon Valley right now, I still call Northeast Ohio my hometown. For over 13 years, I've been helping big tech companies like Google, Microsoft, and now Intuit help build and foster sustainable startup and tech communities. It's a hard job, but it's something that I'm very passionate about and something that I love. For the next very quick, hopefully 5 minutes, I'm going to go through the 5 lessons that I've learned along the way. Number 1 is purpose. Every startup community, tech community needs to define its purpose. It's really the only way that big corporates that I've worked in will engage and sustain with. One of my favorite quotes as a former military person is by General McChrystal in a book he has called Team of Teams. And that is, purpose affirms trust, and trust affirms purpose. So whenever big corporate sees a definite purpose in that community, they're willing to engage and they're willing to sustain and stay with that community. So I tell every community that I go and work with that it's important, which I've seen a lot of tonight, which is awesome, to define that purpose and also define the people as part of that community, what their role is in that purpose. Number 2 is empathy. Just be nice, really. I mean, just be nice. My grandfather had a saying, it's nice to be nice. And unfortunately, a lot of time, big corporates have a really hard time understanding and being empathetic with startups that don't drive immediate value back to the business. So quick story, when Microsoft moved me to Chicago to help foster and sustain that startup ecosystem, I started working with a startup called The Point. And Microsoft couldn't figure out and understand why I was spending so much time building that relationship. But because Microsoft understood empathy, especially with working with startups, I continued to work with them. A few years later, I coordinated a major product launch at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, with that startup, which was then again, at that time, called The Point, and is now called Groupon. No ego. In most of the communities I've engaged with, from New York City to Kansas City, ego becomes one of the biggest deterrents in building a sustainable community. Sometimes what happens when communities start to grow, the people that are involved in building those communities let their ego get in the way of moving that community forward. It starts to erode everything that everyone helped build. So the thing I always tell them is just leave your ego at the door and let your community's ego in its entirety shine through. Number 4 is authenticity. If you don't know what the hell you're talking about, don't talk about it. I've been a founder and investor and still to my core this day a software engineer. So when I engage with startups, I can have at least a somewhat educated conversation with them because I've been in a lot of those shoes. However, if I were to try engaging some of the startups that I mentor at Stanford StartX, or actually some of the startup founders I saw on stage here tonight, I would simply sit there and just listen, but also understand where I could connect them back to the right people in my organization that's way smarter than me, that understands any of this hedgehog stuff that was just described earlier tonight. My biggest thing to everybody that engages in startup communities especially is don't ever try to be someone or something you're not, just ever. And number 5 is connect. The reason the title of this talk is Building Communities One Person at a Time is because it is so important to actually connect in person. This was something I fought with both Google and Microsoft for a very long time because most corporations unfortunately think that connecting means you have an agency or someone else answer a few tweets on your behalf on Twitter. It's super important to be engaged 100% in that community and to be there consistently. So my ask is tonight, for those that are still here, the power crew, find someone here in this community that you don't know and introduce yourself and see where those connections go. Finally, one bonus lesson. Find your person. Building communities in startups is hard work. It takes a lot of conviction, and it takes away from a lot of other things in your life. To find the strength to do that and to do the things that you would do on a day-to-day basis, you need to find your person. It could be a mentor, it could be a family member, it could be a close friend, but find somebody that will completely support you and be your biggest fan. In over 13 years, in the hundreds of talks and presentations that I've done all over the world, tonight is the first night that my wife attended. In the over 2 decades of us being together, she's always been my person. In the movie, A Beautiful Mind, it's a story of mathematician John Nash. Russell Crowe depicted an acceptance speech John Nash never really gave for a Nobel Prize in 1994, and it really is truly the only way I can describe my person, who's my wife. I'm only here tonight because of you. You are my reason. You're all my reasons. Thank you. It's networking time.